I don't think my shrink ray works, guys. It's less shrunk than ever.
Today I'm making a Lego lightsaber. A giant Lego lightsaber. Sorry, missed a word.
The point is to make this, but bigger.
For this build, you'll need PVC pipe, transparent PVC pipe, super glue, craft foam, floor mat foam, coffee foam, black paint, silver paint, sanding tools, safety gear, scissors, razor pens, and a lock cutter. Box cutter. Man, I'm just all over the place today. First, I gathered reference images. Then I got to work. I picked up a piece of 3/4 inch PVC pipe and a joining adapter to match from the plumbing department of my local hardware store. I stuck the adapter on there. I determined through my expert calculations that a human-sized Lego lightsaber would be about 8 inches long. So I marked that off and cut it up with a saw. I did have to sand it flat on my belt sander though. For the details, I'm using predominantly scrap foam from Linking Foam floor mats.
And its width is actually perfect for many of the saber details. However, the pattern on the back is a problem, so I'm gonna sand this on the belt sander.
I smoothed that out to get rid of all the imperfections as well as the pattern on the back. I also did the same thing with the puzzle piece strip from the edge of a floor mat.
I'm gonna super glue this together first and slide it on, which may be difficult. I'm gonna heat form it so it expands a bit, and we'll slide over the tube. Try not to touch the super glue because EVA foam, it's an insulator. You can actually burn yourself if you have your finger over the seam while it's still reacting. Yeah, I can feel it's warm. My idea is a little bit squashed, and I know it's gonna be a tight fit, which is gonna put a lot of stress on the seam. So to reduce that, I'm gonna heat form it just a bit, which will cause this to expand enough for me to get it over the PVC. Try to do this away from the mat because the heat will warp the mat. Also away from your fingers. Gonna add just a bit of super glue, just to be sure. And that went over there nice and easy. Next, we wanna create this band. So you wanna overlap the seams for strength, but you don't wanna overlap them oppositely, because it's likely, if you get close enough, you'll see that seam when we're done. It's very difficult to completely erase them. So for camera, it's always best to have, if the prop has a good side, and I want this to be the good side. But I can get away with, what is that, 90 degrees? 225 degrees of good side? I think we can do that. Oh, is this too big? This might actually be too big. Let me check my source material. Yeah, wow. This is twice as big as it needs to be. Well, I'm glad I caught that now, but this is gonna come in handy later, so I'm gonna hang on to it just off screen. Or rather, I'll let my assistant hang on to it.
Oh my god, it's finger material!
What a whiner.
I transferred the dimensions to a piece of scrap foam that already had a curve to it and cut it out.
I'm trying to be very careful because that line was not totally straight. Yeah, see that? See that curve? This is from a sheet of roll foam, which again, craft stores. See how it gets wider? Going to have to fix that. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna have all the overhang off of the bottom so I can sand it away with the rotary tool. I don't know why I was out so far.
I made sure it would fit before super gluing it on. Then I sanded away some of the imperfections along the cut edge with my rotary tool.
Okay, this is good. I like this. I love it. It's coming together.
I cut the 2 detail strips.
I'm gonna use a smaller strip of black for this, just because it's less likely to show through.
I super glued those on.
Like just detail pieces that are part of a blaster or something. So I'm gonna get the end on there first.
I chose to glue one end at a time and trim the length in between.
To get rid of those gaps, I like to use a filler putty. This is flexible filler, fast dry. Normally I wait till the whole thing's built to apply this because it doesn't dry instantly. It'll take anywhere between 20 minutes and 2 hours, I guess. I might actually sand that too. But these seams are on the inside, so even if it's at rest and rolls into something, you know, the length of the hilt keeps it off the ground. So I can get away with it in this one particular instance.
Then I got to work on the pommel.
This is slightly smaller than the top one and has an itty bitty tiny bevel. I guess because when I cut it at an angle. But that will help because the 4 strips down the sides are supposed to be angled.
Again, I made sure it would fit around the circumference of the saber, glued the ends together, and then heat formed it back into a more circular O-ring, which also expanded the foam so that it would fit over the pipe and then snug back down as it cooled. Then I made the strips along the pommel.
Alright, now we're going to need that piece from before.
Roger.
You're a monster!
Thank you, Roger. Going to put a little bit of a bevel, groove. Doesn't have to be perfect, but, you know, closer you get, the easier you'll make things for yourself. Okay, so then I'm gonna take the super glue. We're not gonna go all the way down just yet because I'm not sure how long that needs to be. But I do know I wanna cover up that seam as much as possible, not just for the cosmetic thing, but also to strengthen it, like I did up here. If you have to do multiples of anything, your first one is always going to be your roughest. So always start on the furthest away from camera side. Once that sets, it's probably set now, but just, you know, I'll be able to do that. It's not a bad look to make it go all the way to the bottom, but it's not how it is on the toy, so you know what? I'm going to put a little bit of a groove in there while I still can.
I put divots in the foam so that the strips would line up with the pommel.
Oh man, I just saw like some smoke come off of that. Wasn't kidding when I said it gets hot. Well, I'm sure it wasn't smoke though. I'm sure that was just like a reactive outgassing. In other words, smoke. Now just repeat that 4 more times. Make for a good blaster. Might do more of these. Now in addition to that little bit of exposed seam on the bottom there are areas where the super glue actually got so hot that it melted in to the foam and chewed up the base of this. And I had to cut away a little bit of this, making it shorter than the others. So I have to build that back with scrap foam, I think the 2mm stuff, and clean up all the seams with putty.
I filled in the damaged areas.
I think I said between 20 minutes and 2 hours for the sealant to dry. And to keep it more on the 20-minute side of things, I've moved it up here to the kitchen, which is like 10 degrees warmer. You can also hit it with the heat gun, but you gotta do it in very well coordinated half-second bursts every 30 seconds, and it's very easy to destroy the thing. So yeah, I'm just gonna leave it in here while I'm cooking, and hopefully it won't smell like hamburger.
I stuck a piece of PVC pipe in the adapter just to separate the prop from my hand while I painted it so that I didn't get paint on myself, and also so that I wouldn't mess up the paint job by getting my fingerprints in it. I'm using gloss black acrylic house paint because in order to get the silver top coat to really pop, the base coat needs to be gloss. It won't look as good if you use flat black. However, the foam does act as a sponge, which is going to absorb the first 2, 3, or even 4 layers of paint. So you need to do this in stages. The advantage of using regular paint instead of aerosol paint is that you can do multiple coats in the same hour instead of over the course of several days, as is the case with many gloss spray paints I've discovered. So I painted it up and tried to layer the paint thin enough so as to prevent it from dripping, but not so thin that I'm not getting full coverage. Because while you won't notice them now, once it's silver, every mistake is gonna pop and just scream, "Look at me! I'm a mistake! I'm where Jake messed up. Look at me," when you're deciding who to hire. So this is a build that I've wanted to do since I was a kid, really, and I literally forgot about it until now, when I got a bunch of saber requests. Actually, I've been getting a lot of requests for sabers that I've already built because new people don't realize that I've been building sabers for like a decade. Just check the saber playlist. But back to Lego. I feel like the Lego company was waiting until I was too old to play with Legos to go, and now Jake's too old to play with Legos. Let's start making Star Wars stuff. But I was finally able to get around to this thanks to my patrons, the folks scrolling by on my left. Left? Let's say right. The folks scrolling by on my right. These videos are incredibly time-consuming and expensive to make, and they're only possible because of support from my patrons. If you'd like to join them so that I can continue to make these videos, there's a link to my Patreon in the video description down below. Every little bit helps to keep the lights on over here. Literally. Just had to replace the breaker box.
I've cobbled together this custom paint stand out of scrap PVC pipe. Typically for a lightsaber, I'd paint it vertically, but because I'm really paranoid about paint drips running down the hilt and then solidifying in the paint job, I'm gonna paint it horizontally and again have the seam sides facing down. So if there are any drips that try to run down the surface, all the potential defects are gonna be on the same side and I won't have to worry about them. I was just about to paint when I noticed this right here, and you know, a seam, I can live with a seam. I can't live with an actual open space. So before I paint this, I'm gonna fill that in, and it's gonna cost me at least an extra day, but I just tried the chrome paint on a test piece, which had 3 hours to dry, and it was dry to the touch, even to handle, but it immediately lifted. I also tried some test pieces that had had a week to dry, and those were fine. So optimal time to recoat is somewhere between 3 hours and a week. Great. Infuriating.
I let that dry for several days, which seemed to be the right amount of time. Then I spray painted it outside while wearing a paint respirator mask. Chroma paint seems to take the longest time to dry, so you're going to want to leave this in a warm area like a garage on a hot day, well, hot week, because it should really sit for a couple of days before handling. It's super easy to mess up a paint job if you handle it too quickly. I do want to point out that LEGO casts this piece in many different colors, including but not limited to silver, dull aluminum, gray, and black. So if you don't want to deal with the hassle of chrome painting, feel free to use any of those alternatives. People are still going to get what you're going for. Several days later, the paint was dry, and I could end the video here, but what the heck? Let's make a blade to go with it. For the blade, I'm going to use a length of transparent PVC pipe.
So we're going to cut that with a saw. Oh, wait, hang on. Just found my PVC cutter. We don't need the saw.
I cut it up to what I felt was an appropriate length for a LEGO lightsaber and stuck it into the hilt. And that's it. A giant LEGO lightsaber. If you want it to be a different color, then you can also use plastic lighting gels like they use in theater lights or movie lights. And that way you can have a red, green, or even a purple blade. Thanks for watching, everyone. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, you can like and subscribe and hit the bell icon to be notified when I post a new prop and costume tutorial, because it is difficult to stick to a schedule when you're beholden to paint drying. But in the meantime, I've built like 30 lightsabers, so you can check those out. Once again, I'd like to thank my patrons. If you're interested in supporting the channel, you can check out the links in the description down below. Anything pledged goes towards improving the video quality, prop functionality, and shop equipment, and allowing me to put together bigger and more exciting projects for you to enjoy on the channel. Happy crafting! See you later! There we go! Now it works.